Hello, dear friends, near and far. We welcome you warmly to our program today. And we are very happy to host Alex Alves, who will be leading our life with the subject Salt of the Earth and Light of the World. Before we begin, however, I would like to take a brief moment for some announcements. Firstly, there is a new podcast like series which is entitled Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. A new episode is being aired every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis and will offer a safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens, bringing insights, actionable tips, and real world advice to help you lead a better life. Subscribe to receive notifications of new episodes at the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube channel. And secondly, on the screen, please note that there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, please scan the QR code. Now back to you, Alex. Together with everyone who is watching this live broadcast, I want to give you a very warm welcome. You are here to discuss Salt of the Earth and Light of the World. Hello, Alex.
Good morning, Sunshine. Good morning to all of our friends that join us at this moment. Thank you so very much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be part of this wonderful work from the United States Spiritist Federation. It's a very good way also for us to take some topics, learn again, or review something that we might have not seen in quite some time. And for me, it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this lecture today. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you, Alex, for being here. It is our pleasure. But before we begin, let me take a moment and introduce you formally, Alex. Alex is a worker and general coordinator of PPS, Plenitude Spiritist Society in Kissimmee, Florida. Former board member of the Spiritist Federation of Florida, and he has been active in the American Spiritist movement for the past 15 years. Now, while Alex will grace us with his talk, you, listeners, are warmly welcome to post questions that we will discuss after his lecture. Again, welcome, Alex. Thanks for being here.
Once again, thank you so very much, Sunshine. It's such my pleasure to be here. The topic that we're going to be developing today is a passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 13 to 16, which says and talks us about the salt of the earth and the light of the world. What is this passage comes from? Where it's exactly in the Gospel it is? What is the hidden message behind it? When we first look at this passage, salt of the earth and light of the world, we have the first impression that Jesus is talking for his apostles only. Because when he says, "You are the light of the world," it gives us the impression that he's talking to someone who already has some inner illumination or their own lights, or someone that can be the guide for somebody else. So that's the impression that we have. So when he says, "You are the light of the world," I have the perception that he was talking to his apostles. But once we look at the passage itself into details, and we started to go a little bit deeper on this passage, we understand that he is not talking just for his apostles. He's talking to everyone. This passage is salt of the earth and light of the world. It comes right after he finishes the Beatitudes, because the chapter 5 of Matthew, it's exactly what it opens the Beatitudes. So the Beatitudes are the central message of the Jesus core teachings. Over there, we have what we can call the greatest treatise on behavior and moral values ever brought to mankind. A true lesson on Christian behavior and Christian values. That's what the Beatitudes are. When we finish to listen to all those passages, to all those Beatitudes, we have the guidance directly from Christ, how he expects us to behave and what he's expecting us to do towards other people and other situations that we might face. It's I would say it's the 101 kind of a behavior lesson that we get from Christ. And the Beatitudes, they are not just the future hopes and consolations, but they also represent a reality that will be reflected in our innermost being as soon as we identify with humility, meekness, mercy, gentleness, and goodness, which is the message of the Beatitudes. True bliss is the integration of the Spirit with the Creator. So when we finish to listen to these passages, we right after that he invites us. So he gives the Beatitudes, he gives the Sermon of the Mount, he teaches us what he's expecting from us, and right after he starts to say, "You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world." So he was not just talking to the apostle, he's talking to everyone who was listening to them. So when he's talking to his disciples, sometimes we confund or we misinterpret or misunderstand what is disciple and what is apostle. There is a difference between each one of them. So what is a disciple? What is the mission that a disciple has? First of all, what is a disciple? A disciple is a person who receives instruction in relation to the one who gives some kind of teachings or anything like that. Disciple is also the one who learns, also can be defined as a student or even one who follows the doctrine of another. So that's the disciples. That's which basically we are all. We are all disciples of the Christ. But what is an apostle? Apostle is something different. A disciple can be defined as a student or someone who learns. An apostle is, in literal sense, an emissary, someone who is sent off, someone that goes off with a specific mission. An apostle was specifically chosen by Jesus to spread the gospel after his death and resurrection. The 12 apostles mentioned above were Jesus' closest disciples. So a disciple is also, an apostle is also a disciple. But a disciple not always is an apostle. We as learners, students from the gospel, from the Jesus teachings, we are all his disciples. And I'm making this brief introduction before we join and we go jump into the passage itself, to make it a little bit very, very clear that this passage that we are about to study and to see, it's not just for the apostles, but it's for all of us. When he says, "You are the light of, you are the salt of the world, you are the salt of the earth and the light of the world," he's talking that each one of us, independently how deeply we are involved with his teachings, yet we are all responsible to be the salt and to be the light of the world. But going through the passages and everything, what exactly Jesus is trying to say on this? What is the message that we can get out of that? Before we go into this, it's also important to remember that the Jesus teachings is not it's a guidance and a teaching for all of us, not just for a chosen or a privileged few. So when we were talking about the apostles, or maybe the message and the teaching is just for the apostles. No, the Jesus teachings is for all of us, independent of our degree of knowledge, the degree of involvement. It's a message that branches the entire world and involves each one of us. So as we have this brief introduction, trying to make clear to whom this message was given to all of us, let's see exactly what is the meaning of this passage. So the passage goes like this: you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So, very first thing over here that I'd like to bring it to our attention. When you were saying the salt of the earth, which is lower E. It's not Earth, the planet, but it's Earth, the land, where we sit, where we walk, the earth that brings us our food, our sustainability, our nutrition, and everything. It is from a work of a seed, a work of sowing. Another thing which is also important, when you were talking about salt, well, what is the meaning of the salt? Why the salt was mentioned over here? To try to understand Jesus' teachings and to try to understand much better the Gospels, the passages that we have through, we got to go back to Jesus' times and to Jesus' culture to understand what he's trying to say. If we go back and we put ourselves onto those times, we will understand better because we're going to understand the exactly meaning of the words and the passages. If we bring the salt to today's life, most likely this is not going to have too much value because salt today is something very common that we throw it away on the streets, for example, to try to avoid frozen roads or to not to accumulate snow in our driveways and this kind of things. Salt today, it's very, very cheap. For us Brazilians, what the most important things that we think on salt, it's the barbecue thing. That's we put the salt in the picanha and this kind of things. But when you look into the salt on Jesus' times, on that culture, it was a totally different thing. Bringing the salt to the context of Christ, the salt on that time, it was also a synonym in a form of wages. The Roman soldier, they used it to have to be paid through salt because the salt was a very important thing on that culture because the salt was an instrument of conservation. In order to be able to keep the meats or the kills or the proteins, let's put it this way, conserved, there was no refrigeration, no refrigerator at that time. The only way to do it, it was using salt. So in order to keep your own survivor, to keep your own food, you had to use the salt in everything that you're going to be trying to preserve. So salt was very, very important and very valuable on those times. So it was so much value that the soldier used to be paid, part of their wages were paid with the salt. So when he's saying that we are the salt of the world, the earth, Jesus was saying that we have value in what we are doing. And we are important and we have a mission to accomplish on this entire project of him. So he's not just saying the salt on today's meanings, but also how important we are on this entire thing. So, okay, we understand the concept, the culture, why the salt is bringing in, what is the value of the salt on that time. So Jesus was comparing us to something really valuable. This is very important to have on our minds. But let's try to understand, let's try to see which are the characteristics of the salt and what we can take out of these characteristics as a teachings for ourselves and try to understand better what Jesus was trying to say. When you think about the characteristics and the properties of the salt, one of the most important ones that says that salt is unchangeable, incorruptible. The salt will never change its characteristics or its value. It will be always on the same way. One of the distinctive marks of salt is incorruptibility. Nothing alters it, nothing contaminates, and then it never corrupts. Salt will be the same all the time, no matter how long it is. The salt never receives; it always gives away. So if you put a salt, for example, on a sweet water, if you have water, you first add sugar, so you're going to have something sweet, and then you add the salt, the water will become salty. So it's not the other way around. Even if you have salt and you try to add sugar, the sugar will not prevail over the salt. So salt, he will never receive anything from anybody. The salt will always give us its property, and it's so strong that it will overcome any other substance. It is strong, it stands out easily, and its small amount, it changes the whole environment. Let's just think what happens, for example, when some cook put a wrong amount of salt on food. The food will become overpowered because salt, it's really strong. Any small amount that we can use it can change the entire thing. This is very important. Found in abundance, both on land and in the sea. So we can find the salt. It's not just on the sea nowadays, on the sea water. We can find the salt in mines inside the earth. We can find salt, for example, if you go to California, that's the dead desert, which is basically it was a sea in the past that gets evaporated, the water evaporated, and the water that remains, the salt that remains in the water, it got in the bottom. So if you go to that area in California, for example, there is plenty of salt over there. There is mountains and mines of salt inside of the world, so inside of the earth. So you can find salt pretty much everywhere that we go. In all continents, we always find a source of salt. Salt preserves the food, preventing from decomposition. That's the main value that we had from the salt on Jesus' times. And also, it regulates the proper functioning of our body. If you think about it, our blood is salty. So the salt is very important also on the maintenance, on the characteristics of our own living, of our own well-being, because salt, it's a part of our composition as well. And finally, salt has no external characteristic appearance. It's always the same, it's always unchangeable, always simple. Nowadays, kind of lately, we start to find out some Himalayan pink salt and these kind of things, but basically, it is very simple, let's say very humble. It doesn't change properties, doesn't change appearances or anything like that. But why am I talking about this? Why am I bringing those characteristics and properties of the salt? And why Jesus was comparing us to the salt and the value that we have? I have a suggestion, an idea, and a proposal. Let's pay attention on this slide, those characteristics. And what if we just changed the title of this slide? So instead of salt characteristics and properties, how about we say Christ's teachings and moral values, characteristics, and properties? They are exactly the same. The teachings and the moral values that Christ brought us they are unchangeable. They are uncorruptible. It never receives or never changes for anything. It always gives towards other people or the ones in need. It is strong. It stands out easily. And a small amount of the application of those values or those teachings changes the whole environment. Let's just remember on the adulterous woman that was about to be stoned to death. Jesus, he didn't even have to stand up. Just a few words, just a few gestures changed the entire environment that woman was involved into. So that changes everything. Christ's teachings and moral values are found in abundance, both on land and in the sea, because he sent out emissaries and messengers all over the places, all over the world, during the entire time of our known society, we always had Christ's messengers spreading out his values, his ideas, his teachings before him, during his stay on earth, and after him. So we can never say that, oh, I didn't know, I never heard. We always had the teachings and the values being spread out. It can be found everywhere on earth. These morals, these teachings preserve the foods, preventing our spirit, our soul from decomposition. If we preserve the intake, if we are taking those teachings and moral values inside of us, we will preserve our soul, we will preserve our spirit, and most importantly, we will nourish our spirits with the true good values, which also will nourish us towards the evolvement, will give us the strength that we need to fight against our own imperfections, be stronger so we can face our challenges and keep moving on our evolvement pathway, which is ahead of us, reserved to all of us. Those teachings and those values regulates the proper function of our body. Our blood is salt. So if we have those teachings, our body will work more in a more balanced way, because we are not going to be affected by other influences. We are not going to be changing our humor. We are going to be able to control the rage, the vanity, the pride inside of us, because if you are feeding ourselves with the moral teachings from the teachings from Christ, we'll be able to control, and we're going to be our body, both the physical and spiritual, working properly and in balance. And another thing, which is also important, these teachings, it has no external characteristics appearance. These teachings, these values can come from someone very noble, very important, that can also be coming from someone very humble, someone that works for us, or someone that has a lower position in society nowadays. So if we change the titles, let's go back, salt characteristics and properties, and Christ's teachings and moral values, they are about the same. Another thing important, salt preserves. In the very first environment to be preserved, it's the internal one, our inner selves, our hearts, our minds, our spirit. When absorbed the salt of the Christian teachings, our spirit is preserved. Our strength is preserved. That's very important to remember. So as we saw these characteristics, and we can compare the characteristics of the salt with the characteristics of Jesus' teachings and values, now we can think about, okay, now I understand the importance of the salt. I know what the salt means. So how can I be salt? How can I act? Because we got to remember always, knowledge is not the knowledge that we have about Christ's teachings and moral value is not just something that we learn and we keep it to ourselves. We learn and we put into a practice. Christianism is something that we apply, that we work on, that we put into action. These are attitudes. We need to put this knowledge towards other people, towards ourselves, but we got to act with the knowledge that we have. So how can I be salt? The true Christian, for example, must be good in the midst of the wicked, just in the midst of the injustice, honest in the midst of his dishonesty, prudent in the midst of the unwise, humble in the midst of the proud, unselfish in the midst of the selfish, sincere amidst the hypocrites, faithful amidst the unfaithful, resigned in the midst of the rebellious, peaceful in the midst of the bellicose, virtuous, in a word, in the midst of all vices and all passions. And these, I would say, guidances or examples on how to be salt, it was extracted from the passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 17, item 3, the good person. actually, this passage on the gospel is much longer, it's much bigger, it has a lot of more characteristics that we could be developing or trying to study. But these are the examples on how we can be salt. How can we be in value for someone and for ourselves? Very, very important. Let's remember what I said in the beginning. The salt during Jesus' times, on that culture, on that time on that epoch, it was very valuable. So when Jesus was saying, you are the salt of the world, you said, you have value. You are important. What you learn from me and what you do with this knowledge will help me to grow the knowledge, to expand the communion between people, and we all gonna be evolving together. So when you are the salt of the earth, you are important and you are valuable on my mission as well. That's what Jesus was trying to say. But in order to be important, in order to be valuable, we got to learn these teachings. We got to incorporate these teachings into us, and most importantly, on our daily actions and attitudes. So if we don't use that, what happens? Because we might be blessed with the knowledge, we might be blessed with the interpretation, but if we don't put this into practice, we are wasting a very valuable resource. So if it is insipid, it is useless. That's what Jesus was saying. If the salt were to become tasteless, that is, it's to lose these special qualities which it characterizes, it will become completely useless. So we are getting the information, we are getting the knowledge, we interpret, we know what Jesus was saying. He's saying that we were valuable. He was saying that we were valuable, but we are not using this resource. So we became useless as well. It isn't the same with regard to the faith that makes us a Christian. If we lose these characteristics, we just saw the one that we saw as important to the South, we also would become completely invalid, useless, harmless, unimportant. Every change of habit, especially the most ingrained ones, imposes unmentionable sacrifices on us incarnated creatures. But that's why we are here. We are here in order to evolve through the changes of habits and old habits that we have. To break up with the old guy that I used to be in the past or my previous life, it is a huge effort. It requires a lot from all of us, in which quite a few times we fail, which we understand. We are all in a learning process. We are all in a learning curve. The how can we say that? The dynamics of learning that God chooses to us is through trial and error experiences. He gives us a situation and said, go there, choose by yourself. If we choose right, we collect a good consequence, we move on. If we choose wrong, we're going to have another way to face it. We're going to face this in another situation in the future until we learn the right outcome. We don't get a teaching, we don't get a lesson, say, well, this is the example, this is the exercise, we should be doing like this. No, we learn on our own. And why is that? Because whatever lesson we get it, we don't forget anymore. If we do it right, we keep doing it right. If we do wrong, we learn something now with something on the way and on now not how to do it, and we're gonna try something different. So it requires a lot of efforts and a lot of sacrifices for all of us. But it is important to say that we may fail, and that's okay. The important thing is not to get discouraged. Remember that for the initial work of the gospel, Jesus requested the assistance of 12 men, not 12 angels. May we fail here, may we do some wrongdoings over there. Yes, that's okay. But what is the intention that we have? What is the intention that I'm applying to the knowledge that I have? I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to help others, even if sometimes I fail here and there. That's fine. That's okay. But at least we're moving on. We are, let's say, demonstrating our value as Jesus required it from us. We might not losing, or we are not might be showing all of our potential, but we are showing our value. And that's exactly what he's expecting from us, right? So now we understand our role as the salt of the earth. But what now? How to be the light of the world? How can we bring the teaching of the light to ourselves? So on the sequence of the passage, it goes like this: light of the world. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they might see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So these passages, it shows us how important we are in order to execute and demonstrate the application, the practice, the actions of the values that he taught us. The disciples, we as disciples of Christ, we work and we function just like the light for everyone else. We are the light of the world. Our task is to enlighten our fellow men and at the same time try to keep them faithful to Christian values by providing them with a consolation, for example, based on the properties of salt, immutable, incorruptible, on small quantities. Our attitudes become the light of the world. So when he says, you are the light of the world, how will be shining up his teachings? How will be shining up his values? By our attitudes, by our behavior, for the things that we say, but most importantly, for the things that we do. That's how we're going to be the light of the world. In order to do that, we needed to incorporate those values on our daily lives. We got to learn and we got to start to develop the self-control, to be stronger on our reactions, for example, on our instincts. We need to be able to control and learn how to dominate our instincts. Once we dominate our instincts and our reactions, our attitudes will represent exactly what Jesus was teaching us. We're going to be becoming the light of the world. If you are still living our instincts, taking care and prevailing over our domain, over our attitudes, we're not going to be able to shine the light as the Christ required from us, or he's expected from us at this moment. Because again, he told us, you are the salt of the earth. You have value. You are important. It doesn't matter how small your attitude or your words can be, but whatever you do will be very, very important. Because, one candle may not illuminate it too much. 100 candles put in together can illuminate a big house. So if we all start to do small actions, small attitudes, small things towards other people, we all be able to be shining little lights. But when we put this all together, we're going to be shining up a lot of things, a lot of lights to a lot of people. That's what is important. So on the past slides, we also saw how to be salt. Now, comparing the same thing and bringing the same parameters to the light of the world, how can we be light? What kind of role does the light play? To enlighten, to illuminate, to clarify, with actions, with gestures, with postures and behaviors. Or as we saw before in another passage, is there is a history which it could never be confirmed. Some sources that it's from Francis of Assisi, some others also say it's not from somebody else. But anyways, preach the gospel always. Use the words if necessary. So if we are not using words, how are we preaching the gospel? With our behavior, with our attitude. that impacts much more than 1,000 of words. So if I'm saying to someone over here, you should be nice, you should be forgiving, you should be humble, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. But when I turn my back and I go outside, I start to fight with anyone. Whatever I said over here, it doesn't have any value. But instead of saying something and I go outside and I forgive someone, I help someone in need. I look for someone that it might be helping or might be needed to talk or to get some kind of a help to something. We are with our small attitudes shine up the light. That's what he's exactly that Christ was expecting from us. So how to be the light in the world? Salt, for example, it's never inactive. Whatever it's found, it is as if you were always acting, continuously exhaling that essence which is peculiar to it. Such should be the Christian attitude in society. His deeds must attest, without a breaking continuity, to the faith with which he is impregnated. Salt never takes, it always gives. Mix it with the sugar, it will receive the essence of sugar and become salty. But a salt will never be sweetened by the influence of sugar. That's important also. I used to say that one of our most complicated challenges, I would say maybe the hugest challenge that we have on our current incarnation, is that the moral, the Christ values and expectations are complete opposite to the world's values and expectations. So when Christ says, be humble, be charitable, practice indulgence, practice forgiveness, practice tolerance, the word says, don't take anything back, don't let people take advantage of you, try to get even with people, or try to get the best out of everything for yourself. You don't think in other people. That's what the word is expecting from us, or that's what the word is saying to us. So these values are very conflictive. But if we are acting as salt, salt will never be sweetened by the influence of sugar. So we will never be influenced by what the values of the world is asking for us. If we have the true values of Christ on our hearts, in our minds, in our spirit, we'll never be contaminated by the values of the world. We will overcome those challenges. We'll be stronger. And with our small attitudes, we can little by little, step by step, convert those values for the values which really matters, the values of morality, the values of Christ. Salt does not make itself known from the outside. In appearance, it's confused with many other substances, but as soon as one comes in contact with it, is readily recognizable. So we don't have to spread out the word. Oh, you should believe in Christ, you should be doing this, you should be going to the church, you should be studying the gospel, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. We don't have to do that. How we behave, how we do things, we speak much louder than any word that we say. So we don't have to be spreading out. We don't have to use ourselves as an eminence about Christianity. The Christianity doesn't need that. It will be preached by our attitudes, by how we behave. The Christian should be likewise. By their fruits we'll know them, and never by any insignia or outward sign. By appearance, he will only be mistaken for the common man, but as soon as he comes into contact with him, he will reveal itself. So when you look into all of these teachings and everything else, we're gonna come to the conclusion that the light becomes stronger when they gather small flashes of light. The sum of all of his small gestures will make it the intensity that we might need to shine up the light ahead of us. So, in order to conclude our talk today, our reflections for today, I would like to once again reinforce the aspects. When Christ says, you are the salt of the earth, you have value. You are important. no matter what you do, how small is your attitude, you have value on our planet. So once you start to understand that and you use your small actions to shine up light in other people, will also be fulfilling his desire when he says, you are the light of the world. So if we understand those concepts, we're going to be understanding the passage. Then what he says, you are the earth of the south of the earth and the light of the world. He was not talking to the apostles. He was talking to each one of us. And he's not expecting a huge change. He's not expecting huge transformations from one day to the other. He's expecting those changes. He's expecting those transformations as we understand, put in practice, as we evolve. But one thing we got to have very, very clear in our mind. The law of progress is for everyone. And it's not, it's something that will come for us for sure. So the faster we decide to move on, incorporate these teachings and change ourselves, the faster we'll reach progress. Because if we don't do this by ourselves, life somehow will find a way to teach us. And I'd rather have making my choices and take care of my control and my involvement than leave that to life to bring the experiences that we might need. So let's be the salt of the earth, let it have value, and let's, with our attitudes, be the light of the world. Thank you so very much for your attention this morning. I really hope that I could have contributed for some reflections for all of us, and I wish all of you a great weekend. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Alex. This was wonderful, and I hope you have time to stay for more questions.
Yes, of course.
It was absolutely heart-opening and mind-opening to realize the true meaning of being the salt of the earth, to incorporate Christ's teachings, that is the salt, the Christ's teachings. It's beautiful. And that's by incorporating these teachings and doing the good, we let our little lights shine. Yes, always doing the good. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for having me once again.
Yeah, no, very illuminating, very clear, very beautiful. And I'm sure there will be some questions. Let us see whether they will be posted. Yes, there is Daniel. He has a question for you, Alex. Thank you, Alex. Beautiful reflection. One of the characteristics of salt is to give instantaneous taste to food, but we need time to become the salt of the earth. Why is that?
Well, there are two things over here. Once we become salt, whatever we do will instantaneously help other people or will affect the flavor of the food that we are preparing. But while we are not the salt, we won't be able to do this, to fulfill this role. Why it takes so long to become a salt? Because also, if you go back into nature, it is necessary a long time to process the salt. Let's say, for example, this desert that we have in California. How many millions of years we have to wait for the water to evaporate before we have the salt? If you go to the salt mines on Earth, on land, it also took a few millions years before they got prepared. So once they are ready, they're going to be starting acting right away. But it takes us time to become salt. Why is that? Because we have to learn. We have to study. We have to reflect. We can have the best intentions whatsoever, but we won't be able to perform if we don't have some knowledge and basic knowledge about those teachings. So let's suppose, for example, that we never had a contact with the Christ's teachings. Once we learn it, once we start to have the first information, we can't start to act right away because we needed to make sure that we understand and we learn it. And this is a process. So everything on our lives is always a process. It's not because I just become a spiritist today that all of a sudden from one day to the other, I'll be able to change my entire behavior, because I'm still behaving and I'm today the results of the experiences that I had on my previous, 10,000 incarnations. All the experiences that I had in the back on my previous life, they are is still with me on my subconscious, or my inconscious, my subconscious. So I need the time also to prepare myself and be able to start to act like the salt. So once we become salt, once I acquire some value, because salt, it can be concentrated, it can be diluted. Once I have some value, doesn't matter how strong is my value, I can start to act as a salt right away. But before, we need to acquire some knowledge and experience.
We're either good students, good disciples, or not, right? And depending who we are or choose to be, that's how long it takes.
Yes.
Well, it reminds me, right? Yes. It reminds me of Saul, who became Paul, and he did it basically in a lifetime. So that's another really beautiful role model, that if we really want to, we can shift a lot faster than most of us do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, I like the example of Paul, because it was the as far as I remember in the teachings and the bookings that we had read before, I think that was the most expressive transformation ever in history of Christianity, because Paul he left it from the Christ persecutor trying to kill all of his followers to the most prestigious spreader of his words and his teachings. With a very interesting characteristics. Paul didn't live with Christ. Peter did, John did, Lucas did, Mark did, Matthew did. All of them lived with Christ for 3 years. Paul never did it.
Yeah.
Paul never did it. He was the most expressive spreader of his words, based only on his studies. And if he did it, we can do it.
Exactly. It's like going from a murderer to an apostle in one lifetime.
Yes, exactly.
And not having met Jesus, as you point out, that's so important. That is really the message for us, because we didn't personally meet Jesus, right? But how encouraging for us. It can be done.
Yes, it is. It can be done with a little efforts, or little no, with some effort, we can do it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
We can do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you guys for having me. That was such a pleasure in taking part of this study today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you,
Do you have
Alex.
any more questions? Do you have any more comments or questions?
It doesn't look like. I think your talk was so exquisite, so clear, and so self-explanatory that there is not much to ask. No, it's just very practical, and you gave a wonderful background. And thank you, Alex.
Thank you so very much. Such a pleasure.
For this beautiful message, and encouraging message too.
Thank you.
So let's see. So we have ongoing lectures, of course, here during this program, the Spiritist Talk Series. And I'm happy to announce that next week, Jean Krongold will be talking on hopes and consolations. And we're already looking forward to that. And before we close, I'm wondering, Alex, would you be willing to grace us with your closing prayer?
Should I be doing the closing prayer?
Would you be willing? Yes.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
So let's raise our thoughts to the heavens, connecting with our guardian angels, the enlightened spirits which are surrounding us, so they can take us to the upper levels, so we can say, "Dear God, our Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for this morning. Thank you for the teachings, the words, the guidance that we just received. Give us the strength that we needed to fight against our own imperfections, so we can be tomorrow much better persons than we were yesterday. Give us the strength and the clarity also, God, to understand our challenges, where we need and we can improve. What do we have to do on our part to be able to be called someday a gospel learner? or a Jesus follower. We are still taking the first steps, we are still taking the first lessons, but we are willing to do whatever it takes in order to evolve and be granted a position in the future. May your light shine upon us, guiding us through our pathway on this incarnation, so we can leave this earth at the end of our life much better than when we came. So be it.
And so it is. Thank you again, Alex. And thank you, everyone, for watching today. Have a
Thank
blessed
you.
Thank you.